Hi everyone, welcome to InDesign Tutorials. This little tutorial, we're going to make a little bookmark, and it gets us started with our very first project to set type in InDesign. We usually start with text, and typesetting is a very common way of working with InDesign and page layout. You work with a lot of text and the little details. Okay, we are going to also work with a new concept here, and that is the point size for our typefaces. The size, the units of measure we use is not in terms of inches, it's used in terms of point size. And you'll also see that there's another unit of measure, a pica, and that has actually in a pica, there are 12 points in a pica. So points is a fairly small unit of measure. A pica is also a part of a unit of measure of an inch. There are 6 picas in an inch. There are 12 points in a pica, and therefore there are 72 points in an inch. That's how a point system works. You'll notice I have a picture here. This is part of Chapter 2 in the Exploring Adobe InDesign book from Cengage. And Chapter 2 has this little project in it. And it gives us the specifications telling us what typeface, what size the type is, and what to type in here. Now I'm going right from the book. This little project does not need any starter file, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, our first step is going to be making a new page. So under File, New, Document. I'm going to do a run through pretty quick because you can use your book to support you. Print, type, and I want to have one column, and because it doesn't really matter, even the margins don't matter all that much. I don't want a slug, and go ahead and click OK. So it's just an 8.5 by 11 portrait page. Now we're going to use the rectangle tool. We're going to use the type tool, and we're also going to change the outer edge to having a stroke around the object. Okay, and in this case, we're also using a full-size sheet of paper to put something on it, and you'll be able to print that out and trim it out for yourself. Okay, so this little project is actually quite useful if you need a bookmark. All right, we're going to start off then using the rectangle tool. And if you need a black, the default is fill and stroke, with the fill being none and the stroke color being black. Now, I don't seem to have that, so I'm going to go ahead and click on the default, and you'll see here, I've zoomed in here, that my stroke and fill reflect that. So I do want a stroke around this. Alright, so using the rectangle tool, now I could click and draw a rectangle, but now I've got to go into the top controls here, and you notice here that I have a width and a height. I would have to type in the size. There is another way to do this, okay? And I'm going to get rid of, delete this rectangle. Now if I get the rectangle tool and I can click anywhere on the page, just click, and it will bring up a rectangle options box, and I can type in the units of measure. It's going to be 2 inches by 7 inches, and click OK. Alright, so we want to also make sure that in my controls I'm using inches, just because that's where I've been able to make this outer edge. Now if you come across doing a really tiny box, well, that may mean that you don't have the correct unit of measure. If you want to change that in your rulers, Control or right click inside of a ruler, and you'll get all of the units of measure to select. Okay, so inches is going to be the measurement of the objects, but points we're going to use for our text size. Okay, so we may have to, type that in. Alright, so we need to use our project information here. We want to type in the information. So one thing that we have to remember when we're setting type is that we first want to type in what we need and then format. You don't want to type in one thing and format it, then type it in and format, and type and format. We want to do things all at once as much as possible. But there's something that we do need to do, and that is with this object. Oh, and it went back to not the default. So I'm going to click on my default fill and stroke here. There we go. Okay, so if I were to look at the preview and click away, yeah, there it is. Okay, I just like to make sure that I can see that black box, black outline. Okay, so I'm back in normal view again. And with the object selected, or even with the type tool, now I can go under object, okay, and then I'm looking for text frame option. Well, actually I do need the selection tool rather than the type tool. You see, what we're going to do next is to work with the text frame itself. Oh, it needs to be a text frame. That's what the problem is. Text, click on it. That's what the problem is. It needs to be converted to a text frame. So I clicked in it with the type tool. Text frame options, okay? You can also type Control or Command B. Now what we want to do is we want to use this control right here, inset spacing. And if you have the make all settings the same clicked so that you have it highlighted, then we can inset or force the text to be away from that line. You can see here my cursor, it needs to be pushed away from that line. And so I want 1/4 inch. You can use the arrow keys, or you can type in 0.25 is the measurement. Press return or enter, okay? And you can see here, all right, that I have that going. Oh, I'm still in preview. Let's make sure. Okay, so I click away from the object with the selection tool. You can see the little inset here. You can actually see it. So I'm going to go back to the type tool. And what we need to do is type in what our project is. Okay, so type in wisdom and then enter outweighs. Oh, spelling. Believe it or not, it's really very important that we use our spelling skills here, because you're setting the type, it needs to be correct. Sophocles, okay. I put a Z in here for, and I'm going to zoom in. If you hold your command and use the plus, or your control key and use the plus, now I have something highlighted, it's going to zoom right into where I have it highlighted. So I have this Z as a placeholder for this object here. Is called a glyph. Yes, it is a character that we will use. It's not actually a picture, it's a character. Okay, so let's zoom back out just a little bit so I can get my bearings. And so now we need to take a look at formatting it. So I'm going to select all. Command or Control A will select everything. You can click and drag, but the other is going to be quicker. And what I tend to do as a typesetter is I tend to take a look at, well, how all of the text, is all of the text one typeface? Is the majority of it a particular typeface? If I have a majority, then I'm going to set all of it, and then I will get into the minutia. So larger to smaller objects, larger, bigger picture, and then do the details. So this says that we need Adobe Garamond Pro Italic. Now if you don't have Adobe Garamond Pro Italic, Not to worry, make sure that it is a fancier typeface. In other words, it's a serif typeface. It has the little extensions and that it will be italic, okay? So that's what we're shooting for. All right, so let's set that into place. I'm going to go from either the control panel, using my type tool. You'll see at the control panel has a lot of my options in it. We'll pull this out a little bit so we can see more of our options. Or our character and our paragraph panels. I also have a glyphs panel, and you can find that under the window drop-down menu, under type and tables, because there are so many panels in InDesign that we actually need to go a little bit further. Okay, so I'm going to go to the character panel and choose Adobe Garamond Pro. And so looking at G's, Garamond. It's in alphabetical order. Okay, Adobe Garamond Pro. The second in the listing here is the type style. So it comes in 4 different flavors. So on italic, and there we have it. Okay, in the next video we're going to finish up our typesetting, and we'll look at how to get this glyph into place.